Okay.
So we're going to just summarize what we talked about last week, that we have the garments of the soul and we have the soul powers. The soul powers are 3 plus 7, the 3 intellectual faculties and the 7 emotional faculties. And the soul garments are thought, speech, and deed, specifically the thoughts, speech, and deed of the 613 commandments of the Torah. And the soul powers operate through the garments, just like your body is enclosed in garments, right? You're wearing clothes. So the soul powers put on clothes, so to speak. They put on these thought, speech, and deed, and that's the conduit through which the mitzvahs of the Torah are observed. Now that's sort of the outer hardware, right? Just like garments, they're kind of like outer hardware. To get a mitzvah done, you need to think it, speak it, or do it. However, in order for a mitzvah to have a sustainable, lasting effect, right? If you want it to last permanently and to have make an indelible mark on you, they have to be done with true passion, meaning with the feelings of love and fear of God. So in other words, if a person were to just learn Torah or do mitzvahs without these feelings of love and fear, it's kind of like a physical garment that's just hanging on the clothesline, but not actually being worn by anybody. Because the essence, the ingredients, the spiritual makeup of a person are the 10 soul powers, his intellect and his emotions. But the thought, speech, and deed are only garments of the soul, which are a external thing compared to the person himself. So it turns out that it's entirely plausible that a person is very involved in learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, being careful to not violate any negative commandments. However, his core is not connected with serving God, because the only level of involvement that he has with Torah and mitzvahs is completely external. It's only in the thought, speech, and deed. It's not impassioned with emotions of love and fear for Hashem. And it's what we call chitzoniistic. It's just external. Externally, he's doing the thing. He's going through the motions. He's doing the things. He's saying the words. He's thinking the thoughts he needs to think. But he himself, at his very core, is totally removed from actually serving and working on serving God. And therefore, what is true avodah? What's true service of God, or avodah pnimis, inner work? Inner work is when a person fulfills the Torah and mitzvos in thought, speech, and deed, but he puts into it the intellect and emotions of the soul. In other words, he puts the soul powers into all of those things that he's doing. In other words, the mitzvah is the result of a person contemplating and meditating about the greatness of God, arousing within himself, giving birth to emotions of love and fear, and then it's a full body experience. Then also his thought, speech, and deed get involved in it in a practical sense. And that's one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, taught and emphasized, which is the great necessity that when we serve God, it can't just be externally. It can't just be that you physically wrap the tefillin. Of course, that's important, but it has to be a full body experience. It has to be emotionally exciting and meaningful. Now, there's one question that needs to be answered, though. If true avodah, if true service of God is only when the essence of the person is involved, and the actual performance of the mitzvah is relatively external, why do we find that practically the Torah commands us to do all of these quote unquote external things, right? Why is there so much emphasis on all these externalities, thoughts and speech and deeds that we need to do? Why isn't the emphasis on just loving and fearing God? If that's the inner work, then let's just focus on that. Who cares about these external commandments? I'm sure you've all heard the joke of the Haredi, ultra-Orthodox man who gets on a bus in Israel, and the secular Israeli bus driver starts berating him why, you go to yeshiva, you don't go to the army, you don't help our country. So he tells him, so he retorts back to him, he says, look, you might consider me an unloyal citizen. I think you're an unloyal Jew. You don't observe Shabbos, you don't keep kosher, So the bus driver says, listen, all these external things, Ani Yehudi balev. I'm a Jew in my heart, the bus driver says. To which the young man responds, Ani chayal balev. I'm a soldier in my heart. Right? So we all understand that being something in your heart, practically, is not the way we go about things. We have to do the external things too, right? However, we spend so much time saying that all of these external things have to be permeated with this internal work of love and fear. But why don't we leave it at love and fear? Why do we emphasize doing the mitzvahs in practicality? So the Alter Rebbe continues, V'hinei, behold, shalosh shalavushim elu me'atero mitzvah. These three garments of Torah and its mitzvos, ashenikroim levushim lenefesh ruach neshama, even though they're considered garments of the three levels of the soul. The nefesh is the basic vivifying level of the soul. The ruach is the more emotional side of the soul. The neshama is the more intellectual side of the soul. But be it as it may, the garments, thought, speech, and deed, are garments of our souls. But im kol zeh, nevertheless, gava v'gadla ma'alasim le'in ketz v'seif amaylas nefesh ruach neshama atzman. These garments are actually greater and can achieve higher levels than the soul itself. Now, normally speaking, when we think about garments compared to the person wearing them, the garment is secondary to the person wearing the garment, right? You have somebody who says, I met the president, right? You have somebody who says, you met the president? Who cares? I never met the president, but I'm his dry cleaner. I got to handle his suits. Say, it's very nice, but you still never met the president, right? Somebody delivers it to you and you clean it, right? Obviously, we understand intuitively that garments of a person are lower than the person himself. However, over here, we're flipping the script. The advantage or the rank of the soul of a person should have been higher than his thought, speech, and deed, which are considered garments, right? But the truth is, although there's an incredible, great advantage and high rank to the 10 soul powers, right? The 3 intellectual powers and the 7 emotional powers. However, the garments of the soul, which are the thought, speech, and deed of the mitzvos of the Torah, they are actually much higher than the soul itself. So it depends what kind of garments you're talking about. If you're talking about garments of the soul, what are those garments? Those garments are doing a mitzvah, saying words of Torah, thinking words of Torah. That is much greater than your soul itself. Why is that? Why is there such a tremendous advantage in doing a mitzvah in thought, speech, and deed? So the Alter Rebbe continues, as it's said in the Zohar, that the Torah, Oraisa is in Aramaic, the Torah, Vekucha Brichu, and the Holy One, blessed be He, Kulachad is all one. In other words, God and His Torah are one entity, right? A professor and his ideas, Einstein and the theory of relativity, are two separate things. There's Einstein, and he has to go for medical checkups, and he has to check his blood pressure and whatever, and it has nothing to do with the theory of relativity, right? They're two separate things. But God and His Torah are inseparable. Perush, what does this mean? The Torah is God's wisdom and His will. So, Hashem and His glory are all one. This is the glory of Hashem. This is what Hashem is. So, in other words, what's special about the Torah? The Torah is not special because it's very lofty and great. You know, it's like a holy angel or a soul. You know, it's up there. No, Torah is unique. Torah is not just very, very high. Torah is a part of God. It is God. It is God's essence. In other words, the Torah is not a thing that was created by God, but it is God's wisdom. It's His DNA, so to speak. And your DNA is you. So when we talk about the Torah, we're talking about God's DNA. This is Him. As we said in chapter 2, He is the knower and He is the knowledge. And He is the ability to know. As we said earlier, in the name of Maimonides, quoted in chapter 2. So God's knowledge is very different than our knowledge. Human knowledge is comprised of two things. There's the person who knows, and then there is his ability to know, meaning his faculties of knowledge, his ability to know something outside of him. But God is the knower and He is the knowledge. Now, that's not something we can comprehend because we know things about the world or even about ourselves, but it's even when we know things about ourselves, we're knowing, let's say I know what blood type I have. In other words, I'm knowing a concept of various different blood types. There's O, there's A, there's B, plus, minus, whatever. That whole study is not me. It's a scientific concept, right? And I am a separate person from that scientific concept, and I can observe and absorb that information, but that isn't me, right? So even if I happen to know, yes, my blood type is such and such, it's really knowing a thing that's outside of me. But with God, God is the knowledge. God is the knower. Now, again, we'll never be able to fully comprehend this. So if you're trying to make sense of it and you can't, you're in the right place. But since you cannot separate between Hashem's wisdom and will to Hashem's essence, therefore, the Zohar says, the Torah and Hashem is all one. Now we can understand why we care so much about the garments. And that's why the work that the neshama accomplishes through its garments, learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, is much greater than the soul itself. Because even though the soul is a part of God above, literally, at the end of the day, the soul is categorized as a creation of God. It's an entity. It's a thing that has an identity to itself. And therefore, however close a person becomes to Hashem, a person cannot actually reach Hashem. However, the Torah and the mitzvahs are one exception to that rule, because the Torah and mitzvahs are one with Hashem. So through the garments of the soul, which are the thought, speech, and deed of the 613 commandments, meaning when you say a word of Torah, when you recite a pasuk, a verse of the Torah, verbally, you are verbalizing God. God is popping out of your mouth. So with all your meditations and with all your working on yourself and love and fear and trying to reach this and that, just simply reciting a pasuk of Torah, just simply putting a coin in the charity box, just simply wrapping leather straps around your arm in the way the Torah prescribes, that is attaching yourself and cleaving to God himself. And so that's why the garments of the soul, the thought, speech, and deed of a mitzvah, is so tremendous, because that's the way a creation can attach himself or herself with the Creator. In other words, Hashem put himself into the Torah and mitzvahs. And so the Torah and mitzvahs are not just instructions and commandments to the Jewish people, oh, this is how I'd like you to live. But these are intermediaries through which we are able to attach ourselves to Hashem. As the Alter Rebbe will write later in chapter 47, that Hashem gave us his Torah, and he enclosed in the Torah his will and wisdom, which are totally unified with his essence, with utter unity. And so therefore it's as if Hashem gave his very self to us. And that is really the deeper understanding of what learning Torah and doing a mitzvah is. It's to connect and to attach the soul of a person with Hashem. So to summarize, we'll say hi. So to summarize, the 10 powers of the soul, the intellect and its emotions, have 3 garments, which are the thought, speech, and deed of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. And the 10 soul powers get dressed in these garments. And so when a person learns Torah with his mind, the powers of his intellect, his chabad, his chachma, bina, and dat, of his godly soul, is being enclosed into the garment of thought. And when he does actionable mitzvahs or speaks words of Torah, the feelings of love of the soul, remember, because that's the real way to do a mitzvah, with feeling and love and passion, are enclosed in these garments. However, even though they're considered garments, there's an advantage in the garments of thought, speech, and deed of the 613 commandments that makes it even greater than all the emotions that were driven by the soul powers, because since God is one with his Torah and mitzvahs, therefore by learning Torah and doing actual mitzvahs through those garments, we are actually attaching ourselves with Hashem himself. That concludes today's lesson, and we'll continue Mitzvah Hashem next week, same time, same venue.